Well, it depends, as you say, on the level of maturity of the student. But, and maturity, I mean not only personal maturity, but musical maturity. How much music they know, how many other works, be it of the same composer or of a different composer, they can relate to. Very often, the composer often writes in a code which is strongly and clearly understood by the contemporaries or by those who know the style, and which may be a closed book for the others. Just to give you an example, not from music, but let's say from visual art. You have on a picture somebody in this kind of pose. You immediately understand that the idea is something connected with religion, with faith, with prayer. You tune yourself to this. If you do not know the conventions, you would not be able to do it. For instance, I traveled in India and I came to the performance of classical Indian dance. It is very beautiful. I enjoyed it. But I clearly understood that in addition to just the plastical beauty of this movement, there are some very important meanings. One gesture would mean one, and another would mean something else. And without knowing it, you do not know what actually the performer has in mind. The same in music. Well, let us begin with a very simple thing. Major and minor, these are also codes. By choosing, well, of course, many things can be written in major and in minor, but certain things cannot be written in major and certain things cannot be written in minor. So by choosing it, the composer already limits the emotional range. For centuries, the composers used the falling second intonation, what was described by various musicians and music critics as sospiri in Italian, Seufzer in German, sighs. So hearing this, you know already in which direction to go. I have heard many performances of Bach's F minor prelude, happily drumming, paparam, 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 while this is all based on this size. For those who know Bach's style, they know that Bach very often use these intonations in his vocal works, in his cantatas, connected with this, with some sorrow, with grief and all that. So this is an example of a code. Of course, when a student does not have this musical maturity, you have to teach the student the code. And there are many other codes. And there are codes which are more universal and less universal, codes which are typical for this particular composer, which the student might not know, especially if she starts, if this is the first piece of this composer that she plays. So this is one of the things you are doing for a person who is more mature, both in personal experience and musically. I try not to impose my view. Very often I ask, well, what do you think about this piece or this section? What is the feeling the composer wants to convey? And let the student say, sometimes it is what I feel really the right answer. In many cases, it's not the right answer. And then I try to convince the student, saying, I don't think so because of this and that, because of this detail in music or that detail in music. And this is, or when the student said, well, this is a very happy lyrical theme, I say, yes, I agree. I would agree with you. But later we have in the same movement, we have another theme, which probably you would also describe as happy lyrical. Now, try to describe in words what is different. What is the difference between the first and the second? Because we would like the characters to be different. And we start talking about various different things. We are talking about the length of the phrase. Is it a very long phrase or kind of cut with breaths? Is the range, the register range, narrow, or it is a very big, includes very big intervals, which very often in Chopin, for instance, create the feeling of this kind of operatic expressivity, outspoken, while others are so narrow intonations which repeat themselves, giving a feeling of more closed, of more introspective thing. So this is, and sometimes with my very mature students, and I'm lucky to have the students. And again, I'm talking not about the personal maturity, but musical maturity. Sometimes I say, well, I can see it being played this way or that way. I see that the texture supports both. It is for you to decide. Sometimes I learn about my students. Some of them react very good to some kind of storytelling, and I try to invent it for them. Some are very well read, and I refer them to certain books which the composer read or could have read. Some are very visual, and I talk about some visual aspects. If the music, of course, if the music suggests this possibility. So it is all very, very different with each student.